For years, the people of Israel lived under a dark cloud of fear. Every planting season brought the same heartbreak. Just when farmers expected to harvest their crops, a powerful enemy known as the Midianites would invade the land. They stole food, destroyed fields, and carried away livestock. Families who worked hard all year watched everything disappear in a matter of days. The people became desperate. Many hid in caves and mountains just to survive. Their prayers were filled with tears, and they cried out to God for help. Among those struggling to survive was a young man named Gideon. Unlike the heroes we often imagine, Gideon did not see himself as brave or important. He was an ordinary man living in difficult times. One day, Gideon was hiding in a winepress, secretly threshing wheat so the Midianites would not find and steal it. He worked quietly, constantly looking over his shoulder, afraid of being discovered. Then something happened that would change his life forever. An angel of the Lord appeared before him and said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Gideon was stunned. A mighty warrior? Those words sounded impossible. He wasn't leading armies. He wasn't fighting battles. He was hiding. Confused and frustrated, Gideon replied, "If God is with us, why has all this happened? Why are we suffering? Where are the miracles our ancestors told us about?" It was an honest question. Gideon spoke from a place of pain and disappointment, just as many people do when life becomes difficult. But God had not abandoned his people. The Lord told Gideon that he would be the one to rescue Israel from the Midianites. Gideon's heart sank. He immediately began listing reasons why he was the wrong person for the job. "My family is the weakest in my tribe," he said. "And I am the least important person in my family." In other words, Gideon was saying, "God, you must have chosen the wrong man." But God answered with a promise that changed everything. "I will be with you." Those simple words became the foundation of Gideon's journey. Still uncertain, Gideon asked God for signs. He wanted reassurance that he was not imagining things. God patiently gave him confirmation, showing that his call was real. Slowly, Gideon's faith began to grow. But before Gideon could face the Midianites, God asked him to face something much closer to home. Many Israelites had turned away from God and were worshipping idols. Even Gideon's own family had an altar dedicated to Baal. God instructed Gideon to tear down the idol and build an altar to the Lord instead. It was a dangerous assignment. The people in town respected those idols. Destroying them could make Gideon many enemies. Afraid but determined, Gideon obeyed. During the night, he tore down the altar and built one for God. The next morning, the town erupted with anger. People demanded to know who had done it. When they discovered Gideon was responsible, they wanted punishment. But his father surprised everyone. He defended his son and challenged the people to let Baal defend himself if he was truly a god. That day, Gideon's courage inspired others and strengthened his faith. Soon after, the Midianites gathered their armies once again. Thousands upon thousands of enemy soldiers filled the valley. The sight was terrifying. Yet Gideon obeyed God's call and assembled an army of Israelites. 32,000 men answered the call to fight. It seemed like a good number, but God had another plan. The Lord told Gideon that the army was too large. If Israel won with so many soldiers, they might believe victory came from their own strength rather than from God. So God instructed Gideon to announce that anyone who was afraid could go home. Immediately, 22,000 men left. Only 10,000 remained. Even then, God said the army was still too large. He led Gideon through a simple test by the water, separating the men until only 300 soldiers remained. 300 men against an enormous enemy army. From a human perspective, it looked impossible. Imagine being Gideon. You are already outnumbered, and now your army has been reduced to just 300 soldiers. Fear could have easily taken over. But that night, God encouraged Gideon. He led him near the enemy camp where Gideon overheard a Midianite soldier describing a dream. In the dream, the soldier saw Israel defeating Midian. The enemy themselves were beginning to fear what God was about to do. Hearing this filled Gideon with confidence. For the first time, he truly believed that victory was possible. The battle plan God gave him seemed unusual. No advanced weapons. No massive military strategy. Each soldier received a trumpet, an empty clay jar, and a torch hidden inside the jar. That was all. Under the cover of darkness, the 300 men quietly surrounded the Midianite camp. The enemy soldiers slept peacefully, unaware of what was about to happen. Then, at Gideon's signal, everything changed. The men blew their trumpets. They smashed their jars. They raised their burning torches high into the night sky. Suddenly, the valley exploded with noise, light, and confusion. The Midianites woke up in terror. The sound echoed from every direction. The flashing lights made it seem as though a massive army had surrounded them. Panic spread through the camp. In their confusion, the Midianites began fighting one another before fleeing into the darkness. What seemed impossible only moments before became a miraculous victory. Israel was free. The people who had spent years hiding in fear could finally breathe again. And Gideon, the man who once doubted himself, became the leader God had called him to be. But perhaps the most powerful part of Gideon's story is not the battle itself. It is the transformation of a fearful man into a faithful one. At the beginning, Gideon saw only his weaknesses. He believed he was too small, too ordinary, and too unqualified. Many of us feel the same way. We look at our problems and wonder if we are strong enough to overcome them. We focus on what we lack instead of what God can provide. Yet Gideon's story reminds us that God often chooses ordinary people to accomplish extraordinary things. God did not choose Gideon because he was fearless. He chose him because he knew what Gideon could become. The victory was never about Gideon's strength. It was about God's power working through a willing heart. The lesson is simple but powerful. Fear does not have to control your future. Doubt does not have to define your life. When God calls us to move forward, He does not ask us to be perfect. He asks us to trust Him. Gideon started his journey hiding in a winepress, afraid of the enemy. He ended it leading a nation to freedom. And that same truth still speaks to us today. God can use ordinary people in extraordinary ways. When faith becomes greater than fear, even the impossible can become possible. That is the inspiring and unforgettable story of Gideon, a man who discovered that with God beside him, weakness became strength, fear became courage, and victory came when all hope seemed lost.